draft horses, the big horses, were very much a part of my very early life. Um, the garbage wagons were drawn by horses. The people who didn't have refrigerators had ice boxes, and the iceman came with a wagon drawn by a big draft horse. The people across the street had their morning rolls delivered by a carriage, man with a carriage and a draft horse. And the ragman came by. And in those days, I don't know what happened to the business, but he was he'd call out rags. He was a foreigner, and the rags would be recycled, and I assume for paper or cardboard or something like that. This was the time of the great drought in the United States, and some days in Milwaukee, the sky would be totally clouded with dust from Oklahoma and Nebraska. And I had a very carefree life. So I went to school at the State College, which is now the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They had an elementary school there for practice teachers. Never learned any grammar there. I learned grammar when I took Latin as a freshman in high school. I went to a private high school, which is now part of the University of Wisconsin, called the Milwaukee University School. My father, my grandparents were very old-fashioned. None of them drove cars, nor did they own cars. My grandfather, Elsner, and my grandmother, Elsner, lived in a duplex in this area on Maryland Avenue, which is not too far from the university. And my other grandmother, who was a widow, lived with her daughter and my uncle on Maryland Avenue, which is not too far from here. So the family lived in this general area. When Barbara and I were married, we wanted to move out of this area, and we did, and we moved up to Minneapolis for a job, but we moved back here, and now we're in this house, and we're just as close to the family, the original family, as we were when we were children.
Okay. I have a question.
Yes.
I got to know from Barbara that your grandfather never believed in university education.
No, it's my.
Oh, it was your grandfather.
Yeah,
okay.
It was her grandfather.
Okay. So how about your university education?
I had 2 years before World War II and 2 years after, from 46 to 48. I graduated from Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. My further studies were cut short due to the death of my father. And so I came home to take care of and sell his business. And so I did not go to law school, although I was registered and my luggage and all my books were at Northwestern. So. But that's the way things happen.
So what was your father's business?
He was real estate and insurance.
So did you take that business forward, or you sold it off and you started something new?
We sold it. Yeah, we sold it. Yeah.
Okay. And then, what was your new venture?
Well, I got a job with a company that made scaffolding, steel scaffolding. In some parts of Asia, they use bamboo for scaffolding, and tie the stalks together for scaffolding. Here we make it out of steel.
So you worked with the same company throughout?
No, I worked for a company that made hydraulic jacks for about 10 years, and I I moved to a company called Manpower Incorporated, which is a in the in the early days it was called a temporary help service, and it did about $80 million a year. Now it does $4 billion a year, and has 4,000 offices, with most of its business in Europe. Yeah. And I retired when I was 75, so I enjoyed working.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Elsner, I have to stop for a while because
Okay.
Steve is there to take a video recording.
Okay. Education. When I was in third grade, we had an ornithologist from the Milwaukee Public Museum take our class over here to Lake Park for a bird walk, and it changed my life.
How did it change your life?
Well, because I became interested in the outdoors. We now have land up in Sheboygan County, and we're great believers in the land ethic of there's a book called Sand County Almanac, and that was written by Aldo Leopold. He's probably the foremost conservationist of the 20th century. And so we have, a big part of our life is not just here, but up in Sheboygan County, where we have 150 acres, and we've planted thousands of trees and bushes and planted prairies, and we raised a family out there, in the summertime anyway.
So is it only the Sheboygan County where you have done things for conservation? Have you tried doing things around in this neighborhood? Something about the environment or landscapes or things around the beach?
Barbara is very active in the local neighborhood organization. You want to explain that?
Well, but she's talking about you, honey. And why don't you talk about Lakeside Community Council?
Yeah.
That was really early. What year was that?
That was probably 1960 or so. Anyway, we were concerned because they were turning these houses into duplexes, and duplexes into having a third family on the third floor of the house. And so we started an organization to oversee the city of Milwaukee was enforcing their residency rules. In other words, we have zoning regulations, and in this area, you couldn't change the zoning and make this into a two-family. But people around us were making one family into two-family, and I started a group called Lakeside Community Council. That sort of faded away, and then Barbara became involved in the Water Tower Landmark Trust, and she's been a real mover and shaker, as we say. Yeah.
Now, you talked about preservation in terms of the housing and everything here.
Yeah.
but you are more interested in conservation, the environment issues, the plantations, the birds. You said
Yeah.
you are interested in ornithology. So,
Yeah.
uh, were you concerned about the lake park here, doing things in the lake park,
Of course.
and maybe the beach or the other parks here?
Um, well, Barbara's is really watching over Lake Park. Um, it was designed by Olmsted, a famous landscape architect who did the parks in New York City, and they haven't followed the plans. It's Lake Park, and all they do is plant trees, so you can't see the lake. So,
Well, in addition, of course, I was on Preserve Our Park Board to protect the lakefront. As well, it was actually we're concerned about all the parks, but the biggest threat endlessly has been the lakefront, because all kinds of organizations keep wanting to have memories of things, like the plane went down with people that rescued. You know, they were doctors and nurses, and the plane went. It was very sad. They had flown someone here for medical reasons, and then the plane went down. Well, that's very sad, and it maybe deserves a memory, but you don't necessarily need that at the lakefront. Well, that's an endless issue. People constantly want to be along the lakefront, and my position is that it should be saved
and the
as
veterans
natural
want to
estate.
put all kinds of monuments along the lakefront.
Yeah, the veterans too.
I was a veteran. I am a veteran. You know, I fought.
And she,
I fought in the infantry in Europe in World War II. I was wounded and captured.
oh, then can you tell more about that incident?
Well, I was at the end of the war, so my timing wasn't very good. But we were in Austria, and it was right at the end of it was May 3rd, and we call bottled up in the mountains. The Germans had put up all kinds of roadblocks, and as soon as we were able to break through, my squad in a jeep. There were four of us. We were supposed to check out the defenses of Innsbruck. So we were on the Inn River. The Germans had blown up a section of the road, so we had a river on one side and cliffs on the other, and they had that area zeroed in with machine guns. And there were four of us, and we were all shot and captured. I was able to speak some German, so through a series of transfers going back towards Innsbruck, I persuaded the German truck driver to drop us off at a hospital west of Innsbruck in a town called Schwatz, which didn't have a hospital, but they converted a school into a military hospital. So, and then this was May 3rd, and May 8th, the war was over. Not good timing.
So this was your experience after you got married?
No, then I went back to school for 2 years. And this was 45. I waited until 1950 to get married. I didn't find the right woman. But I did after the war.
So where did you guys meet?
Do you want to take that?
I had a date with a friend of his, and he had called up the friend and said there was a lecture at the university, you want to go? So I had a date, and I get in the car, and he's in the car. That's where we met.
So then what happened to his friend?
Well, we're still good friends, but then I started to go out with my husband-to-be.
So it was in 1950? This was in 1950.
No, probably 48 or 49. 49, I believe.
We were married in 1950.
So then you said you were in Minneapolis for some time.
Yeah, we were up there in 52, 53. Yeah.
And then you came here and then you stayed in Whitefish Bay for a couple of years.
Yeah,
And then you moved to this house.
that's right.
Okay. So,
You know more about the family than I do.
tell me about your early years in the house and time with the children and your time in this neighborhood, the people around.
Well, we were receiving a great deal of pressure from St. Mary's Hospital, and they owned the house across the street. They bought it and were using it for storage, and they wanted to move indigent girls in there, unwed mothers. So we had a big battle with them, and we finally had them. They finally put that back on the market for sale, and then people came in and gradually fixed it up, and it's been used. And the latest inhabitants moved in there within the last few months and done a lot of work on the interior. There's the doorbell.
I'm ready for it.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to. You can take that out of the. Yeah. So,
You can keep talking.
okay. So, what else do we need to cover?
Well, things you can remember, stories when you moved to this house and your
Well-
life in this house, the neighborhood.
Well, we had a great relationship with Taliesin, where Frank Lloyd Wright had his headquarters. I had a nice letter from him, and we worked with his wife and a couple of his key decorators. So have you talked about
I don't.
I don't know. This rug is an exact copy, except his wife intensified the colors. So this color right down here was more of a light tan pink. But at that time, Cherokee red was Mr. Wright's favorite color. So he used that in everything he did, on his stationery, on his decorations, that sort of thing.
So, did you get everything done in your house when you moved in, or this happened gradually?
It happened gradually.
Yeah, we lived with a 1916 kitchen for what, about 2 years?
Yeah.
The linoleum was very tired. You know? I mean, what, 16 to 55? 40 years of linoleum is, and it was old-fashioned linoleum, so it was
I don't know
pretty,
if they still use it anymore.
yeah.
What do you mean by old-fashioned linoleum? I don't really know.
Well, any material is improved through the years. What you're wearing and I'm wearing is better than it was in 1916. So the linoleum,
It dried out and cracked.
yes, it was very. We had a cleaning lady, and she was endlessly pouring wax over it. Didn't help, you know. Now we have, and the replacement, which is now about 45 years old,
Yeah.
was high end, and it doesn't ever even have to be wax, and it still looks good. Okay, so That's what I mean by difference in fabric. Huge difference. In all ways, really. So everything we use is the technology on every single industry. The growth of that is enormous since the 50s.
So, Mr. Elsner, tell me about you as a professional in this house. We know about her story as somebody who was taking care of kids and with the people in the neighborhood. And tell me about your experiences.
Well, I traveled a lot, so I was flying a lot. So I came home for the weekends. I spent early on when I joined Manpower Incorporated. I spent 3 months in Minneapolis, and I just came home every other weekend. They had a need for a manager up there, and that was my early training. So Barbara was very good about taking care of the kids while I was traveling. So our oldest son Bob had an appendix.
Appendectomy.
He had an appendix operation. She didn't tell me that until I came home, so she didn't bother me with that. However, when I was up in Minneapolis, she called me and said there was a mouse in the house. So we had, that was the important thing. What was I going to do? Nothing, of course. I don't know how you ever got rid of the mouse. She probably called her brother or something.
So this was around 1950s to 1960s, 70s?
Yeah.
So that time you could be in contact with each other on telephones?
Sure.
So what, you came here on weekends. So what you made sure you wanted to do at home?
Well, mainly go to the country.
For picnics with families?
Well, we dug a pond out there because we had springs, and so we have a spring-fed 2-acre pond, which is nice and cool in the summertime.
And that you said that's out in the country, so you mean like
It's in Sheboygan County.
do you still have it?
You bet. Yeah.
And they have planted trees there,
Yeah.
right?
Thousands of trees and bushes, and we have a prairie should be big, but this is in the Kettle Moraine, so it's very hilly with trees on it. So you have to find an area of flat land. So there's probably the flat land is probably no greater than 5 acres in 5-acre pieces because so there is some flat land.
We always said we got twice as much for our money because of all else, you know. And of course, it is very beautiful, and we also have marsh, river, and creek.
Yeah.
So it's
So after you came back from Minneapolis, you were here again in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Well, I traveled to the Manpower offices.
you might want to tell her about Manpower.
I did briefly earlier,
Oh,
but
I didn't hear that.
it started out as a small company founded by 2 brothers who were attorneys and they couldn't find a replacement secretary when their secretary was sick. So they thought that maybe the place they should look for one is from a company. So they thought, so they started the company. So it was a family-owned company.
And what are the sales today?
20 billion.
That's a manpower.
Yeah. 4,000 offices. So it's been a great success story. And they have a wonderful brand new building on the Milwaukee River in downtown Milwaukee. It's 5 years old probably. It's a beaut. Really really a nice job. So we came in from the suburbs. We were out in Glendale, which is north of here, and we moved downtown, and we're on the Milwaukee River downtown. So that's a success story of its own. That takes a whole chapter.
Barbara mentioned that you proposed something of a ship on the a museum or something on the lakefront.
Oh, that was saving the lakefront again. But he wasn't involved in it. But veterans, even though he's a veteran, the county said, "Oh, the veterans want this," so they were afraid to vote no. But a lot of veterans did not want it. That's what I had said.
So when did you stop working? And
I stopped working in 99.
long time.
Yeah.
So why did you stop working, and what were your plans after you took the retirement?
Well, the official retirement age is 65 because that's when your Social Security starts. But of course, that was started by Germany in the 1800s because no one lived till they were 65. So it was easy to offer them retirement pay after they stopped working at 65. But I worked until I was 75 because I enjoyed the work. But I worked less and less. I did less traveling. In the last few years, I just worked, a few days a week.
So after you retired, what were your daily schedules?
Well, the challenge of the current era is all the new electronics. We now have a new personal computer with Windows 8, which is driving us nuts. Everything is complicated. The electronic world is complicated. We have cell phones, and we have a whole new television system, and that was complicated. So we get the same station. We get the same. We have a major television operation is above us right up here, but we can get the same stations on the two other television sets, the one in the kitchen and the one in our bedroom. So the electronic age is not for people who want to have a lot of relaxation.
If you're old.
What else do you do? Do you go for walks, or do you have friends in the neighborhood, or do you go to libraries?
Well, I belong to a men's book club, and we use the library a lot. I don't walk very much. because I'm having trouble walking. But up until recently, I was biking every day and did a series of exercises. Before the biking, I get up in the morning and jog.
Yeah, and then you were an early jogger. It's a time when most people thought he was a little nuts.
I was jogging at 5. I get up every day at 5:30 and jog through a lake park. And there were very few joggers then, but of course now there's joggers all day long. You know.
So tell me something about the book club you said.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is it about and where do you guys go and when do you guys meet?
Well, we meet monthly, and originally the book club was made up of the husbands of our wives' book club. But since that time, a number of my colleagues have died, so it's made up of men who are still fairly active, but none of us are really in great shape, you know. I mean, I'm 89, so you know, I have problems walking, and it was gradual. You know, the first thing I had a tendon, ruptured tendon, so then I couldn't jog anymore. Then I'd bike, and then I had another problem a few years ago with balance, and I had an accident on the bike. So now I have a trike, a 3-wheel cycle, and that's why I'm a little late this morning. I was out on my trike through Lake Park.
So Lake Park is a important area.
Well, it's
associated
important for
with your
me
life.
because it's right next door.
So what is a favorite place spot in the Lake Park where you usually go?
Well, there are wonderful paths through the park which are much better than the city streets. They're much smoother. So I go from one end of the park to the next. So I make 2 loops through the park, and that takes about an hour. And it's much safer and also much easier riding in the park paths than it is on Milwaukee streets. No potholes.
And how about the beach? Do you like the beach? Do you like going to the beach? Do you like being in the lake park and watching the waters from
Well, the
lake?
water we like. We don't go down to the beach anymore. We have our own beach up in Sheboygan County. I swam in high school, so I was a swimmer. And I swam when I was 5 years old. And Barbara learned how to swim at the same place I did, on the Milwaukee River, just south of the North Avenue Dam. There was a swimming club there. So we learned to swim at Beckstein's.
You said you don't go to beach anymore, but you used to go to the beach. So, and she said that the Bradford beach was not safe. So you used to go to some other beach, McKinley Beach.
You used to go down there and swim after
Occa-
work
Occasionally, yeah.
when we first moved here.
Well, yeah, that's because
You've forgotten.
that's so long ago. I've forgotten that.
And do you have any memories with the Bradford beach?
Nothing that's particularly outstanding, you know.
So,
You know, some of the stuff is really trivia, you know. I mean,
but it would be trivial for you, but it is very important, even if your ideas or things.
Well, it's not just about your personal experience, but it's about some of the anecdotal stuff that you mentioned, and
Yeah.
how that can be talked about by 3 or 4 different people and referenced, and then it becomes a historic event, because once more than one person remembers something, then it's something that's important to a group of people. And so this is what we're helping, is for these ideas and these concepts to be able to be looked at through the project.
That's interesting way of putting it.
Well, Barbara, let me give the credit to Barbara. She has been very active in historic preservation. And have you talked about your pattern of going from one historic location to another and helping save the building and the organization?
Not really. I mean, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't remember.
But very important question I have for you
Yeah.
is, you said you have some book club and things, but Barbara is still active with the Water Tower neighborhood group. Then she attends all these lectures which are pertaining to the neighborhood. So, do you accompany her to some of these lectures?
Sure.
And she said you were supportive to her in her activities, her actions against the city or the St. Mary's turning houses. So, were you a part of her?
Yeah, he was very much a part when we first early water tower fighting St. Mary's. You were involved in that,
Oh, yeah.
Bob.
You bet, yeah. I can remember during the 1960s was a time of turmoil in the United States because of the war in Vietnam. A block south of us here is a small park with a water fountain in it, big one. The agitators used to gather down there, and they would riot. And the police, police had to use tear gas on the. So I had to go. I remember coming through here, and I had to go around. I couldn't get home this way. I had to go north and then come home because of the riots just a block from us, right next to St. Mary's. On that there's a 1 block square park just south of St. Mary's. So that was a sign of our times.
I think your memory is quite faulty. Because you were out of town and you called up because you listened to the news in the morning.
Yeah,
and-
but I had to come back through that.
Well, I think you were out of town that morning, the following morning.
Because
you called because it was on the national news.
Yeah, well.
Are you all right? Because you
Yeah,
saw
but
them
that
walking
lasted
down
more
our
than
street.
one day, Barbara.
Okay. Well, then my memory's
Yeah.
faulty.
It went on for some time. Went on for a couple of weeks. And we had hearings at City Hall. And because we were trying to get police protection.
Well, and to stop the drumming all night long.
Yeah. They'd be banging the drums all night long.
So, how long it lasted, the riots?
Well, I don't know. The drumming and the gathering, I would say at least a month and a half or 2 months. Don't you think?
Maximum, yeah.
So, who are all who are doing these activities?
Well, I told you the other day that the journal wrote it up. A little thing about someone putting their toe in the fountain. And then the more they wrote, the more they came, and they were from all over the Milwaukee area and some from Illinois. It became a big gathering. We're going to fight the system kind of attitude. I mean, it was really a bunch of, what were they assembling for? Just because it was fun to be there. It was summer, let's go down. And someone actually in our neighborhood just recently told me, because there's been a proposal to take the Water Tower Park and convert it, on the weekends to have a green park there, even though there's not much parking anywhere. So it was an issue that has come up. And she was a girl in high school at that time. And she talked about, and she lived way out somewhere. So they decided it'd be exciting to come and take a look what was going on here. And this is Dawn McCarthy. And I guess she and her, they walked up the hill, and they no sooner got up the hill and they saw the cops and all this and ran away, So she was here the night they really finally put a stop to it. But it was really unusual for a city not to take any action and allow drums all night long.
Well, the 60s were a time of unrest in the United States, particularly among the young people and the colleges. College life was not fun then. It was a lot of drinking, drugs. Smoking, a lot of restlessness among the students. And we had a son that was a victim of that. So it was early 60s were not a great, or mid 60s, I think it was. But anyway, it's peaceful now.
Tell me something about your life with your children. They're growing up and you're parenting.
One thing we did, we decided I wanted to be with them on the weekends, and you can't do that if you're going to be playing golf. So there was a small tennis and swimming club quite a ways north of us here. So we took out there the weekends. They learned how to play tennis and learn how to swim. And then Barb and I would play tennis in the morning. Then we go swimming with them, and we have a picnic lunch out there. That's before we had the land in the country.
There's also a golf club or something in the lake park.
Yeah, there's a small golf course.
So,
A small.
so you went there sometime?
Not very much.
Never golfed.
No,
I played there as a kid. So.
No, I never took up golf
So
because I wanted to spend time with my kids.
So you always went to the Sheboygan County?
Well,
Usually.
on the weekends, sure. After we had a house out there.
Were you a strict father?
Was I
A
strict?
strict father? Trying to control some of the activities or something?
Of course.
We only had good kids.
The kids were all fairly
We
well
never-
behaved.
We never had a behavior problem, fortunately.
Tell me about your life with Barbara after you retired. How both of you pass your time at home. And maybe you can tell me the contrast between your life when you were working and after your retirement.
Well, when I was working, it was obviously quite structured. We'd have breakfast at a certain time, dinner at a certain time, and things like that. Well, then the kids grew up and were married, So now it's very informal. She gets up and walks with her friends every day for an hour. I get up when I feel like it and go out biking. I do a lot of reading. I'm interested in military history or conservation subjects or books. Aldo Leopold was a big influence on my handling of the land in Sheboygan County, on how we planned it, and the Sand County Almanac is a book I read. I read that book in 1948 when it first came out, but he has an earlier book, which is covers land management, and that was published in 1933. I read that around 1942, before I went into the war, but that gave me an understanding of the planning and planting for bird life, and that was my interest. That's how I became interested in it.
So, in the Sheboygan County, you have planted to invite more bird life.
You bet. Yes.
Yeah, it's land management.
So,
We've identified 81 species out there.
so do you have different species coming in summers, different for winters?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the phenology of the spot? Like how you've seen it change over time?
Well, we had the vegetation has become much more dense. First of all, we planted several thousand trees and shrubs.
Oh,
Yeah.
5,000, those white pine alone.
Well, no, it was 2,000 of the white pines and 2,000 of the white spruce.
Okay.
So we put in hedgerows that will give them good nesting and protection from predators.
But one of the interesting things, even in that field, what was recommended to plant, 25 years later, oh no, that's bad, you know. So you have to remove some of the things that the DNR was recommended.
Department of Natural Resources recommended multiflora rose. They say this will attract birds and it will provide good nesting sites. Well, it became an invasive species. So the last few years we've been cutting it out and eradicating it. So now we're spending a lot of time on eradicating invasive species.
Do you have someone to protect that place?
No, we don't
People
have
who
anybody.
live there.
No, we don't have it.
It's farm country primarily. So,
Barbara, we would like to know about in detail of the preservation, historic preservation things he told you to tell in detail about.
about preservation,
Yeah, in the community.
well, preservation, you know, really it wasn't even a story in most of the United States. Some on the East Coast and some in California, until about 65. And one of the things that happened in 65, there was a small Frank Lloyd Wright house, and the federal government decided that they wanted to build a road, a federal road, and it required that house would be taken down. And it was taken down, and it was moved into some park somewhere. I don't remember. However, that was the beginning of a national law that you could not use federal money to destroy a important piece of architecture. So that's 65. I mean, we bought this house in 55. So you can see there was no interest, mostly in the United States, in preservation. And the National Trust for Historic Preservation, I don't remember when that was founded. But it was significant for me once St. Mary's violated this street, because that was the only thing I knew to do, because there wasn't anything in Milwaukee to protect anything. And I certainly had witnessed when I was younger and too busy with really little ones that Milwaukee tore down 2 beautiful railroad stations. Also, they tore down some beautiful houses in this area overlooking the lake. One was even the County Historical Society house, but the years in the 30s, the county supervisors had decided all the houses should go along the lake edge coming up from Lafayette, so that, the public could have the view of the lake. Well, of course, a lot happened between the 30s and the late 60s and 70s. We had expressways, many people had moved out, and so the mission in the 30s, which seemed logical to give the public more public park space, was no longer legitimate. However, they continued to do that. And there was a house on Lafayette, gorgeous. $50,000 they spent, which was really a lot of money to tear that down. And the whole interior was done by Niedecken, who was considered, here's a book on Niedecken. He worked with Wright. He was an interior designer. Now museums pay a fortune for some things, pieces from his design. And so it was really sad to watch some of these gorgeous homes going down, let alone the depots and some other beautiful buildings, many buildings around Marquette. And with my first experience with St. Mary's, then I read in the paper about the city, Marquette University, going to tear down the Plankinton Mansion, which was a perfectly gorgeous mansion. And I can't remember, I think I must have read in the paper about the people trying to save the Paff's Mansion and called them, can I help or something like that. Anyway, I did end up on the board of the Paff's Mansion, and that was a time when the Archbishop had come in the 60s and painted all the woodwork with paint, even the overdoors. There were overdoor paintings, all those paintings would paint over. In other words, he destroyed all the beauty. and the original chapel was destroyed, and so forth and so on. And of course, most people thought, why would you want to save that? And the Marquette University had been tearing down a lot of major houses. When Milwaukee was built, one of the primary roads was Wisconsin Avenue, which was called
Grand Avenue.
Grand Avenue. And so Pabst built his house there, and a lot of other people. Sort of similar to this area, when you got into the turn of the century, a lot of the leaders of major industries built their houses along here. And they didn't earlier because they thought it was unhealthy near the lake. And where the Paff's Mansion is, at the time it was built, at least from the 3rd floor when I was president, was no staff running the place, you could look down and still see the river. So you see that, and the Germans settled mostly in that area. But they tore many, many beautiful houses down along Grand Avenue. So, and of course, then they did tear the Planking Mansion down at midnight when all the preservationists were out of town at the National Trust meeting. And it was after that that we were able to get a preservation commission to stop some of that
It's always
destruction.
good to have a known enemy. So having an enemy like that, tearing these houses down, it drove these women to battle. So they responded heroically.
Well, and of course, when I was president of Pabst Mansion, we had a $50,000, we had to pay a year on mortgage. And we had one employee. And, there weren't many people coming in, and everybody thought this was difficult. Today, they have 33,000 visitors a year. But nobody would believe that that might happen, and it was important to save some of these beautiful buildings. I don't think most people really understood that beautiful buildings like that would never be built again.
In what ways was Mr. Elsner helpful in your activities? Maybe approaching somebody or somebody he knew who could help you or something?
I want to say not a darn thing, but that's not really quite true.
I stayed home with the kids.
Okay. Well, you were helpful with Water Tower.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved in the Pabst Mansion and that stuff. So.
Can you tell us more in detail about how his help was
In
important
the Water
for
Tower?
You? Yeah.
Well, initially, it was a struggle, but you came to all the meetings, and I don't remember that many details. The early fight was so endless and difficult.
Can you remember any of the first victory that the Water Tower had? Remember, there's a monument to the first president of Water Tower.
There is no monument because remember we tried very hard. The first president, he came in to help. A few neighbors came in to help, many of whom, the most of whom are no longer living. And but he died fairly early, and we tried to, have some kind of recognition. So we wanted to give this is the difference between the park administration then and now. We wanted to give a tree in his memory. Oh, no, you can't do that. Even though someone would donate the tree, pay for the truck to put it in and so forth, you can't do that. And in those days, the union of the park system was so strong that you couldn't do anything in the park. Now, of course, it's so desperate after many, many years of diminished budgets that they almost let people do anything in the park and volunteers. Certainly in the spring, we have garlic mustard, which is so invasive, so the volunteers can do a lot of work. And then Lake Park Friends have been working in the ravine, taking away, it's all the kind of work that a lot of the park workers used to do, but there aren't that many park workers anymore. So that philosophy has changed dramatically. And now, of course, it's gone excessive because there are too many benches. There were never any benches like that along Wall Avenue. So.
Barbara, do you have any photographic collections of both of your life?
Of our life here?
Yeah, earlier photos.
We have a few pictures of our kids, but I don't think I have any. Because even, the camera is so much easier today. And of course, even when I felt so badly that St. Mary's tore that gorgeous house down, that was just over there, there are no pictures of that. There's nothing at County Historical Society, which has always been a weak organization as well. It's improved today. So I can't believe I didn't take photographs before it went down, but I didn't. And
Maybe
so
photographs of
none of
you-
those gorgeous
you
houses.
all gathering up in the water tower neighborhood group and
Yeah,
trying to do.
I don't remember any. You see, it's changed a lot. Photographs, today, we were taking photographs all the time, but that was not the case. And
Or do you have any of the articles you got published in the newspapers?
well, it's too bad you didn't come last year because I think I tossed a lot of that, but I might have. I have to look.
Okay.
And I don't even know if I kept that 25-year agreement with St. Mary's. I think I might, because we're getting ready to move on, right? And so I've been tossing a lot of things. So I'd have to look to see if I have because I did have a lot of articles.
Mr. Elsner, you wanted to say something while she was talking.
I don't think so.
Okay. Because she was talking about the water tower neighborhood group, and then you could remember something.
My memory is fleeting. I might have a thought, but it's gone.
So can we have a walk around the house and
Okay.
talk about things?
I
in the
think
house?
you walk around the house with Barbara,
Oh yeah.
because she has the historical perspective.
Yeah. But then we want you to be there, so maybe you can sit somewhere and
Well,
talk about the memories.
Maybe-
I'll walk behind you.
First,
You
maybe
can
we
sit-
could get the intros from you guys.
Yes.
On video. So yeah, and
I
then,
would
I'm
just-
just gonna move the camera up a little bit,
Yeah.
and then I'll do you guys one at a time, okay? So. there
If
you
I'd
go.
known I was going to be photographed, I would have
Yeah.
powdered my head.
Oh, that's fine. It's great lighting.
You look great.
It's actually, I'm gonna ask you to turn that off because that's actually not even necessary for
Right.
for this video.
Okay.
So. All right,
That
so
too has changed.
yeah, for sure. All right, so why don't you just introduce yourself? Say my name is, and then say your
Yeah.
name, and then your first and last name, and then just say I guess that'll be good for now. We'll just stick with that for now.
My name is Bob Elsner. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Milwaukee. And we're sitting here in a Frank Lloyd Wright house, which is one of his few townhouses.
That's good. Let's do that one more time. That was really good. So can you back just a little bit? There you go, right there. Awesome. Okay, go ahead.
What?
Do you mind doing it one more time?
Oh,
You gotta repeat yourself.
oh,
Yeah.
my name is Bob Elsner. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Milwaukee with a couple of vacations in World War II in the infantry, and a 2-year stay in Minneapolis for business.
Cool. That's good.
Okay.
That's good. That's perfect. And then we'll just get you, Barbara. And, all right. Okay. Go ahead.
My name is Barbara Elsner, and I'm a resident of the Water Tower area, and have been lived in Milwaukee most of my life.
Good. Just state your positions on the boards that you've been on and the conservation groups that you've been a part of. Is that okay? So go ahead.
I was involved in starting the Water Tower Trust Organization in the 70s. I was a board member of the Pabst Mansion. I was on the first board of the Franklin Wright Building Conservancy, which is a national board trying to save all Wright properties. I was a founder of the Milwaukee Ballet. I was on a board called Milwaukee Psychiatric Services. I was on the board of the Visiting Nurse Association. I was a founding member of the Frank Lloyd Wright Wisconsin organization. And that's enough, right?
You,
That's awesome, though. That's a lot.
you got the.
If that's not everything, I'm impressed. I'll tell you.
You missed the first one, which was down in Delafield someplace.
Oh, yeah. What was the name of that? The boy, I was going to say the boys. What was the name of
And
it?
then you
Lad
were,
Lake.
you were on Lad Lake board, and you say the Visiting Nurse Association.
Yeah, I did say that.
Okay, all right. She missed a couple, but I can't remember them either. So
Trust me, I would not be remembering either. Yeah,
Well,
that's
listen,
that's a lot.
when you get old, that's the real issue.
For
The
me, it has nothing to
memory
do
and
with age.
and also the energy.
I've-
You know.
I know it's going to get worse for me, but I've already, as a teenager, I would go into one room looking for something, forget what I was looking for completely
But
by
that's,
the time I got to the other
that's
one.
mindfulness. And that, you know, I'm serious. There's really a good video. This man he's head of that department at Harvard in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And he described it. He said, well, you know, I'm working on my typewriter and so forth and so on. Or not typewriter, he's writing on his computer. And then he gets up and he goes into the kitchen. And then the cat whines, so then he feeds the cat. And then he's there and he said, why am I in the kitchen? Well, he came into the kitchen to get a drink of water. He said, well, you don't remember that because your mind isn't focused. So his mind was on what he was writing and so forth and so on. So when you say you didn't know what, that's mindfulness. That's
That's
not losing your memory.
You know what?
That's very different.
I've never had the distinction made for me, and actually, you're totally right.
Well, that's a big part. I got the tape, and it's a big part. He keeps repeating that often.
Okay. Nice. And maybe
Just relax. It's mindfulness. And when we first saw that, we dropped it a little bit. We were constantly saying to each other, mindfulness, because it is focusing.
Yeah.
And you got other things on your mind, and then
I bet it does help memory though too, because if you do focus on things, then you kind of repeat the thoughts, and that's what trains the brain. To
no, there've been
remember.
a lot of cartoons about people are halfway up the stairs and they say,
what
"Am
was
I going up or am I going down?" You
Yeah.
know, and why?
Right. So anyway, but that is the latest out of Harvard. So
Nice.
there.
Nice.
Okay, now we're gonna
Now we're
walk
supposed
around
to
the
walk.
house.
Yeah.
Barbara, I also wanted to maybe think about some of the photos which we can have. Maybe you as a young, like maybe in front of the house, some old photos, or maybe in the lake park or on the beach or in the neighborhood around.
Okay.
Even though it's not
We don't-
fighting for the neighborhood, or
well,
maybe you can think of something.
yeah, I'll see if I can think of something, but
Yeah.
I don't know. And let me straighten out the chairs. Sure, but the dining room is specifically a total design room. And of course, you probably know, by the time he got to the Imperial Hotel, he even designed the china. And in some places, he designed the dresses for the mother woman of the house. So, not many houses were designed with that kind of dollar. And actually, there's a conference from the board that I used to be on, Franklin Wright Building Conservancy, the one coming up in the fall, is focusing on the design rooms and where he did have that opportunity to do that. And you can understand someone with great heart and vision. It really bothered him terribly to walk into a house, and of course there's stories about Wright. He arrives at your house and he says, take down that painting, or, how can you put that in my, or people go to bed at night and they come down and he's rearranged the furniture again, back to how he liked it or thought it should be. I can understand that feeling. I mean, I won't have the gift, but I can understand his creation, and it really bothered him. So he had that exquisite sensitivity of beauty and how he felt it should be. So.
Well, I think you underestimate yourself. You always have comments about how things should be.
Oh, I know. My
And-
friends, they
in
drive me nuts.
other
They walk
people's
along and
houses
stuff,
or
and I said, "Look at that house that's
outside
painted
or
wrong."
the house is not placed properly or
Yeah, I know, but I don't have the genius.
or the color's wrong.
Now, some of the detail that Wright did was really interesting, and I can't believe this was an accident. I don't know if I showed you this the other day. If you come, right early, at a certain early period, he'd like to have sculpture when you come into the house. Well, if you look through here, it absolutely is, you'll see the sculpture over the fish
The
pond.
pond, yeah.
Certain
The two
point on the
stars.
steps, depending on your height, you look through there.
That's not an
you'll see the
accident.
cranes at the fish pond.
And of course, even right here, you see everywhere there's creative architecture, if you will. This is a wall, but it's not all the way up to the ceiling. And even this beautiful, I find this wall quite beautiful, and you see the wood trim there. I mean, he made, it's simple but beautiful, right? And then, of course, it makes the space feel better. Saw it? Yeah. And even the fireplace, look at the fireplace wall. You see that little area there? I mean, all he's doing is changing the brick, but it's a statement, right? And then over here, I mean, who in the world 100 years ago would have concrete slabs in the living room, in the high-end living room, right? Nonetheless, it's quite gorgeous. And of course, really the concept is when you enter, you turn, it's dark. He likes dark entrances, hidden entrances. You come up and then you turn and you're supposed to see something beautiful. Here it's his own design wall, but sometimes it's a lake or a river or an ocean. So, how are we doing?
Right.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. Is there, you're in the space and you're interpreting it for us so that we can kind of see it a little bit through your eyes. You know, I mean that's the kind of the experience we want. We could sit there and look through historic documents and get the facts, but this is kind of
When
your
you are
viewpoint.
talking about your house, we'll get to know your concerns about the house and your house being a part of the neighborhood. So, a lot of things we get to know about your ideas on things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that is very important for us.
So, of course, we're all amateurs here today, right? I mean, you guys you're
but
learning.
you have
I'm learning.
experience. You have experience.
I beg your
Being
pardon?
here. You have an experience being here.
Well, yes, definitely. Years of experience.
Experience of
And learning.
fighting for the community.
Right. Plus, learning a lot. Honestly, I'm really fascinated how much I've learned about Wright with his 800 square foot house on the south side. In the process of trying to furnish that as he envisioned. That takes a lot of focus, and we, of course, have some people that really know what they're talking
You
about.
might want to mention the house on Mirror Lake.
Oh, yeah, well, that's sort of interesting. The last house that Wright built, designed, I mean, is an 800 square foot house as well on Mirror Lake, which is near the Dells in Wisconsin. And many years ago, I got a call from this lady, and she wanted to save it. It was in terrible shape, and she was very persuasive, and I had enough. I mean, you know, there's enough to do in Milwaukee to save things. Why did I want to get her worry about a Wright house, you know, in Wisconsin somewhere else? Well, she was very persuasive, ended up being a very good friend and a terrific human being. And so she finally persuaded me to come up and see this wreck. And what had happened is, you know, this is next to the Dells, and Mirror Lake, next to that was a state park. And they decided at one point to take a few houses along Mirror Lake down to enlarge the park. And in the process, someone said, well, you better not tear that one down. They owned it. Because, you know, that was designed by Wright. Well, so they didn't, but they didn't monitor it. So the kids got in there. So by the time I went up to see it with this person, you know, the roof leaks all over, just a total mess. And I thought, what are you going to ever do with this? Well, she created the idea that people might want to stay in those houses. There are a lot of people that love to have the sleep overnight, see what it feels like. And this is the last of the small houses. The ones on Burnham are the first, and then we have the first 800 square foot and the last one.
Do we have a photograph in any of those books about with the Mirror Lake house?
I don't
Yeah.
believe so. I don't know. I don't think most of what's written about Wright is not the latest. We may have I have a brochure.
Or how about these books that we have on right here?
Well, the Seth Peterson isn't in there,
Seth Peterson is not in here.
but it's here. Well, see, you can hardly see it. But that's the Seth Peterson, and this is that's not. Where is Burnham Street? That's the Schwartz house. Oh, Burnham is up here. So those are the two. You can each have one of these, because we're going to do new ones anyway. You can take them for all your friends.
Well, thank you.
Or your fellow, you know, whatever.
Fellow architectural students.
Anyway, all it was, so she did restore it, and she raised the money to restore it. And now you have to make a reservation 2 years ahead of time to stay there. It's been that successful. So, but it's interesting.
People plan their honeymoons for there.
Yeah, well, it's, you know.
I might do that too.
Yeah, right.
When?
Your next life.
My next life.
So, anyway, that's a great story. And so now we do know, and we're gonna do that on Burnham Street too. In the duplex, we're gonna start renting. And for people that just wanna stay for a couple days. But anyway, what I'm saying is, my eye keeps, and my awareness keeps appreciating Wright more and more the more I learn them. And that's why Wright suddenly becomes so, you know, I had looked at those figures like yesterday, like, you know, when they had the Wright show at the Guggenheim about 4 years ago, like, you know, 650,000 people came. I mean, it's enormous interest. So, are you guys getting tired of your, have you been at this a week or 2 weeks now?
This is the second week.
Yeah,
Second week,
coming
yeah.
on the end of the second week.
And this is
I mean, it keeps you
5
really
year
busy,
research.
doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes, because we
that's
have
what-
to document things.
It's great to take a short course like that, all compressed, really.
Yeah.
But it is really intensive and it is a short course.
Mm-hmm. It's very focused, and I appreciate that. Like because I live in Wauwatosa, and I'm gonna go to school I'm gonna go to school at UWM this fall. So like finding out how the east side is structured really, and getting a feel for the place is really valuable, as well as learning about Milwaukee and
Yeah, that's
all of
right. You're just starting, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're a freshman. You're
Oh,
so
yeah.
mature for your age.
So, Mr. Elsner, I would like to ask you a last question, which just came to my mind. What was it about Milwaukee that made you live here, or brought you back here?
No, I was born here.
Yeah, but why didn't you decide to stay back in Minnesota?
Well, I had a job offer here, and
family.
family, and
I mean, you know, our parents. Or
I mean, how could
brothers,
you?
sisters.
The fact that you have a lake out here, which is spectacular. You know.
It is a beautiful state. This is my favorite thing I ever got. You know, I've had the pleasure of living here. I've met a lot of fabulous people. And this one is Denise Scott Brown. I don't know if you know who that is. You've ever heard of Venturi?
Yes.
Well, that's his wife. And I did have lunch with them and saw their home and so forth after she visited here, because she said I should call her when I got to Philadelphia. And believe me, she was smarter than her husband. And he got the big award, and there's still a fuss today that she didn't get it because their firm was been together, and now they're trying to resurrect that back in, I don't know when the award was, probably in the 80s. It was like an insult. And I remember waiting for her. She gave me these instructions. I'm waiting at their architectural firm. I'm looking through a book of McDonald. I think that was her name. She was, what's the Scottish architect? McIntosh's wife. So she said, oh, yes. She said, I think she was the gift to one, not McIntosh. And I thought, yeah, and you're thinking you, after I had lunch with her husband, you're the gifted, and I think that's true. Anyway, this was a beautiful letter. Thank you so much for letting me see your beautiful house. As with Wright's best work, although one's eye dwells lovingly on the details, is the overall atmosphere, the noble milieu, that remains to haunt one. You are lucky indeed to live in such a house, but I feel the house and its architect are even luckier that they have you. And so I hope you will visit them in Philadelphia. But it's a beautiful expression of what she saw in this house. So, and you know, she was very big in saving Miami. She was also an urban planner. And when I went, she said, well, you know, meet me and then we'll drive out. My mother's leaving today. She was born in South Africa, and mother was living in Switzerland. That was the last day there. So as we were approaching, but she wanted me to see the house, their home. And as we're approaching it, she said, now close your eyes. Well, what had happened, this was a gorgeous German house and a big piece of land. And before they bought the house, probably years before, a developer had bought land. And so if you went down what was designed originally as the beautiful driveway, there were ticky-tack houses. And so can you imagine this major urban planner and architect having to drive past that every day to get to her house? I mean, really would have violated. But the house was very beautiful, a lot of ingredients. And she found this area. She was in Milwaukee to speak at UWM at the time. And she said, this area reminds me so much of my home and the German influence. And there is it's a mix of German and Wright and Prairie. But you can't, if you have an eye for that, you can see that in that, reflected in some, not all of the architecture, but in much of it. And she enjoyed that here because it was also their home, which was gorgeous.
I think you ought to become an associate professor. Could pick up some change that way.
Yeah, right.
But yes, we can have your sound clips, which we can, make many people hear that and maybe open their eyes.
I don't know. But you know, it has been a really gift by living here to have meet all these lovely people from around the world. You know, that's pretty nifty. You know, so
would you say that the woman the wife of
Venturi.
Venturi was the most memorable person you've met through owning this house?
Not necessarily. It was just that I thought her note was so generous. And, it was very generous. I mean, there I am, having lunch with them and getting to see their house. I mean, I was nervous as Cal calling her. You had business in Philadelphia. Well, she did say I should call her, so I did, And so I got a generous response, so.
That's always a nerve-wracking experience.
Well, her passion and gift is architecture. But now you watch for her name because you're going to see that she probably will. They were going to, what is that big award for architecture every year? I've forgotten the name of it. But it's very interesting. See, she was here in 75, so he must have gotten the award about 85, 90. But you can see how violated she felt. And as I told you, my own impression, just being with two of them for a couple hours, is that she was a big talent. And it's been in the news. They are re-looking at this. I mean, even at the time, a lot of people were really upset. And of course, if she really could have controlled her husband, he should have not accepted it. But they said, well, we've never given an award to two. Oh, there's always a time for change. So.
So thank you, Mrs. Elsner.
Well,
It was
nice to
great
see
time
you
talking
again.
to you.
And I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr.
Nice
Elsner.
to see you.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
and we would expect both of you at the exhibition. You,
And I look forward to seeing those gold earrings again too.
thank you.
So tomorrow I'll come around. It's a big issue.
What's you
We
have
just
an
bought
issue?
a new television and we can't get it to work.
I can take a look at it.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, but AT&T Uverse.
That's what my mom has.
Okay.
Oh, well.
All right.
You're our man.
So this was all set up, okay,
Yeah.
in the last year. And everything was working fine. The TV went out.
A new set. I mean, what a crazy world. I mean, that's, see, that is one of the big differences. Frugality was part of my upbringing. And it was really part of our parents' upbringing. I mean, each generation. Now, it's disgusting to me, the excess consumerism and throwaway economy. It's really shocking difference.
Yeah. It's like there's no value for anything.
Right, and you can't justify, I mean, Best Buy or whatever, they have a right to charge to come out. But you understand the new manufacturing. I'm very worried about the big world. There are not going to be any jobs for anybody.
The other thing I noticed after coming here is that you get things in bulk. For example, you get things in bulk. You go to Pick and Save, or you go to in places to buy things, and you get things like ton of things, and then a lot of things are wasted.
You're right. You see, and of course, we were raised, and I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about my generation. Finish your plate. Think of those Chinese starving kids. So their waste was. I hate waste, and that's one of the reasons that it's right into preservation, doesn't it? It drives me crazy to think they build buildings for 30 years. I mean, I think that's disgusting, that you don't think of things lasting. Just tear it down and try a new one. Did you resolve it? Oh, gosh.
There's a button on there. You were caught in the on-demand section, which is like the pay-per-watch section. And, there's a button to get to there, and so it might have
accidentally.
gotten pushed, and then you just have to push a button that says exit to TV.
Oh, that's fabulous.
God bless you.
Well, there are some benefits of giving interviews.
Yeah, exactly.
Unseen benefits, yes. So this is the picture I got out there. I feel like I could get a little bit better picture if I waited maybe another 20 minutes, but I kind of like the shot. It's not bad.
Yeah, but you probably would have been better rather than straight on to angle it so the trees don't cover half of it.
Well,
It's in a flat on is not a good way to photograph this house. It's more of an angle that you get much more of a feeling.
yeah. So that's
Why I'm very aware of flat on isn't quite. I don't think it's as good as an angle with which. Yeah, see, that's much better.
Yeah, and then I got some interiors as well when we were walking around as people left the rooms. I tried
Well,
to
you
get
really
some.
do get a lot of color without any lights all over.